Where did you grow up?
In Iowa, in in a small town in Iowa, Norris Springs. It's 10 miles from Mason City. I was there from until 1945.
And what did your family do?
My dad was a salesman for farm animal stock foods. And my mother, well, she was home most of the time. Later in life, she worked at the school with the lunches, and in a restaurant downtown, she washed dishes there till she had to quit. But she quit school when she was 70 because she had to.
And did you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, there were 10 of us. My one brother died when he was six weeks old. And I had 4 brothers that were in the service. So I wanted to bring a copy of that World War memorial that's in our little town. I couldn't find that either. 5 brothers and 3 sisters. Did I have that right? Yeah.
What was it like growing up in Iowa during the Great Depression?
Well, we lost a home when I was about 5, I think. And my dad managed to feed us because the farmers needed food for their animals, so he was able to sell. But I didn't know until later that when he was really needing money, he'd go up to the pool hall downtown. It's a small town, less than 2,000 people. But he'd usually play pool with somebody that didn't know him, and he'd win because he was pretty good at it. So that was just a little sidelight. Other than, well, later in life he did, he was a policeman in town. That didn't amount to too much. And he also delivered mail in the country. So that's pretty much what he did. He died when he was 78.
Would you call it a happy family?
Very happy. We all got along. We never had anything. When I was about in the 7th or 8th grade, probably, my sisters and I, two of the sisters, went to Mason City with our neighbor who grew vegetables, and we'd go from door to door selling the fresh produce on Saturdays, and the people were waiting for us because the food was so good. Then after we didn't make much money. I can't even remember what it was, but I do remember getting an ice cream cone afterwards. We always did that. And we always had meat and potatoes, and my mother made cakes. She was good at that. But we all helped, and we didn't worry about clothes. We never had any money for that. When I was in high school, again, my sister Muriel and I worked at the restaurant downtown. We were waitresses there. And I worked at the bookstore in school, sold tickets at the theater. Always something. Oh, earlier than that, though, I worked the summers at couple farms. One, I helped a lady that was expecting a child, and I took care of the house, I don't know how well, while she was in the hospital. But I was there about 3 months, I guess. And the year before that, I was at another farm. I don't remember much about what I did, except I did wash the separator for the milk after they milked the cows. Other than that, a little bit of housework.
What kind of a kid were you?
That's hard to say. I didn't get into any trouble. Enjoyed the life. Go roller skating when the rink was set up in town. It wasn't always. One house that we lived in, we moved a few times. We were in Scarville, Iowa, Leland, Iowa, and Keister, Minnesota. Those are the only places that I can think of. One of those homes, though, we had a big porch all the way around the house, and we roller skated on that. We always got along.
Do you ever miss it?
I'm sorry?
Do you ever miss it?
No.
You don't miss Iowa? Nothing about it?
No.
Oh.
No, I don't. I go out every year for a family reunion, and I like Iowa, but I'm glad I'm here. I like Pittsburgh and I like Pennsylvania. So I've been here since 49, I think it is.
Do you remember December 7th, 1941?
Yes, but not greatly. I know that I was home, and we heard it on the radio. I think it was early morning, just about 8 or 9 o'clock, something like that. And I can't remember too much other than that. I know that we were aware of it.
Do you remember how life changed in the weeks after that, or months after that?
Well, just the rationing. No, I can't think too much about it.
No brother went off into the service or anything like that?
Not immediately, but I had a brother that went into the Army and a brother that went into the Navy, and then later a brother went to the Korean War, and another brother that was in the Army. So there were 5 from our little family that were in. It's pretty good representation.
How did you get in?
Well, I went from Norris Springs to Des Moines after I graduated, and I went to the American Institute of Business for about 6 months. Then I worked for an auto parts store, and then I was an assistant secretary. No. I was a secretary to the assistant manager, advertising manager of Better Homes and Gardens magazine. And I can't remember how long I worked there, but I went home to the apartment. I'd thought about enlisting different times and didn't do anything about it. And then this one Sunday afternoon I was ironing, and I was thinking about it, and I said, why not? So the next day I went down and inquired about it. And I was 20, so my dad didn't really want to sign for me to go in, but my mother did. And he really didn't object, but he just didn't want to do it. So I told him that I wanted to wait until their 40th wedding anniversary that was coming up. But they said yes, I could do that. But then I got the orders right away and I missed it. So I went to I went to Hunter College for boot camp. Had 2 months there. And that's where we marched, and we had some classes. I can't remember what the classes were, but I can certainly remember the marching. And we'd march everywhere we went. When we would go to the mess hall, we had these seats that pulled out, and we'd have 20 minutes to eat. Somebody would say, "Seats under, let's go." So whether you were finished or not, you went. I gained weight anyway. The food was good.
Had you ever been out of Iowa before?
I don't think so. No.
What was it like to get on a train and really go far away for the first time on your own?
I did not mind it at all. I can't even remember how the trip was to New York. But when we left, no, I can't remember. We were given aptitude tests, and they wanted to know where we wanted to be stationed and what we wanted to do. So I told them that I'd like to do office work in California. And I got both. I was sent to San Francisco. And I remember going through Utah and looking out the window and seeing the Mormon temple or the grounds. But we did go on a troop train out of, I don't know when we were on that troop train, where we were going. But the people, this was down south, and people came out. When the train stopped, they had lunches for us. And that's the only time that I remember being on a troop train.
Wasn't it, I just imagine being 20 years old, being in New York City for the first time, having come from a town in Iowa to New York City.
Had no problem.
But it must have been either a wonderful experience then.
It was, yeah.
Meeting people from all over the country.
Uh-huh. And I made friends with some that we kept in touch all through the years. Now there's only about 3 of them left. But we'd go to conventions and get together. You'd just take up right where you left off. It didn't seem like there'd been a bunch of years in between at all.
Why did you want to join the Navy?
Well, I don't know. I liked the uniforms. But I always liked sailors also. I didn't question where I would be enlisting. I just figured Navy is it.
And why was your dad not too excited about it?
Oh, I think he was just worried about it, that I might get into trouble or wouldn't have a good life or something or other. He was a good guy, very proud of his family, and we listened to him pretty good. My mother was more lenient. She'd let us get by without doing much of anything around the house. She wasn't the greatest housekeeper either, but with 10 kids, or 9 kids, we weren't all there at the same time.
And why did you want office duty in California?
Well, I guess California appealed to me, and I had been doing office work.
What appealed to you about California?
I don't recall. Probably activities and weather. Other than that, I don't recall. I just was awfully glad I was there.
Isla, what kind of work did you do in the office?
Filing is the main thing I can remember, and typing, and I did take some dictation. This was in the Navy, yeah. And I worked for a commander and a commodore. The head one was an admiral way down at the end of the hall, Admiral Ingersoll. I don't even recall seeing him, but he was right close by.
And did you spend the whole war there in San Francisco?
No. There were about 5 of us that were going to get out when our enlistment expired. Then before we got discharged, we decided we wanted to stay in. Then all the, I was a yeoman, and all of those billets were filled. So we couldn't do that. They suggested that we change our rate. So I became a specialist V, second class. It's like an airline stewardess. And we went to Patuxent River, Maryland for about 2 weeks for training, then got back to Moffett Field, California. And let's see, where was I? Anyway, we flew these R5Ds between Moffett Field, California, and Honolulu. And that was really good duty. We'd get on the planes and we'd check the life rafts and seat life jackets, make sure everybody had one before we left, in case we had to ditch, which we never did. And sometimes we had to take a shuttle to Alameda. And then we took those other planes, the Mars series. It could be the Philippine Mars, the Hawaiian Mars. They had about 4 of them, if I remember correctly. And they would take off from the water, taxi out on the water, and they got the speed up, they would get airborne. And there were times we had cargo, sometimes we had service people being transferred from one station to the other. Sometimes it was hospital flights, and there would be people on litters, and then there were the diaper specials, families of the service people, when they could go to where they were stationed. And sometimes we had to cook. When we had cargo planes, we cooked for the crew. We had a little galley, do bacon and eggs.
And this is all after the war?
No, this was during, well, I went in, yeah, it was after the war. I went in in 45, 2 months before the end of the war.
Do you remember VJ Day?
Uh-huh. I was in San Francisco that day, and it was kind of wild. Everybody was hugging each other and kissing each other and really celebrating, but it got kind of a little rough, so we went into the theater, and after we were there, then we left, but it was quite a place to be.
How did you, or when did you get out of the waves?
In November of 47. I went, well, I went to the hobby shop, well first, when we were in Hawaii, if you had any mechanical problem, your plane was taken out of rotation, and you stayed there until it was repaired. Could have been a day, could have been a week. So we had nothing to do while we were there, so we'd go to the beach, and I went to the hobby shop. That's when I made the photo album. That's also where I met my husband. He was making a purse for his mother. And we met on the 6th of September, and were married on the 9th of November. So it was a very quick time. And much of that time I wasn't even there, besides back and forth. But we had a good life for 23 years, and then we got divorced on our 23rd anniversary. And then that was November the 9th, and March 6th of the following year he died. So had one son, Gary, and I'm very proud of him and feel lucky to have him.
What does WAVE stand for?
Women Accepted for Volunteer Emergency Services. Yeah, the fellows didn't want us in there, really. They didn't even like the idea of women getting into service. But when it had emergency attached to it, they figured it'd only be for a short time. But it wasn't. And women performed admirably in so many different categories. So they're still in. And
I've read that World War II was really a kind of a great time of opportunity for women. That kind of sparked, the opening up of opportunities for women. Do you think that's the case?
Oh, I'm sure. Because they had, especially in the waves, they had women doing everything. Radio operators, control operators, airplane control, whatever. And the women were allowed to do more and more. And civilian life, they're engineers and so on. That started then, I think. So I've always thought that the women were not deprived. I was never one of the...
Why did you decide to leave, to get out?
Because I got married. Yep, I requested it. And then right after our November 9 wedding, I got out on the 14th. Then we headed back to North Carolina. Well, let's see.
What does your service mean to you? You know, that was so many years ago, and it's still clearly very important to you.
Very important.
Why? What does it mean?
What does it mean? Just so proud that I was in it. Glad that I did my part. And gee, when I went to work, I guess I got 5 points for being in the service, but I don't know that it mattered. I just feel kind of attached to other service people. I'm just happy that I was in. And then there's the VA. So we're fortunate in having that. For medical reasons, I got my hearing aids from them at no cost. They furnished the batteries.
The Navy treated you well when you were in it?
Very well. One time when I went to the VA, they had to ask new questions, and they asked if I had ever been harassed, so that they could put that in their study. I said no, never. I just always was treated very well. I don't know of anybody that was mistreated then. At boot camp, I know that there were some that couldn't take the regimentation, and they were sent home. One other one from California was sent home because unhappy. Well,
What can we're going to look at. I'm going to make a copy of a couple things. The sale of Hosery, a newspaper article, and then a little ration thing about was Hosery ration? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, can't remember too much, but it was hard to find a place that had them. So when you got a pair of nylons, you were pretty lucky, and they did last quite a while. That's about all I can remember about
All right.
that.
Thank you, Isla.
Uh-huh.
Now I'm going to